Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the April 28, 2020 Development Review Commission. Thank you for joining us by way of computer or whatever other means you're using to get this done. I appreciate that it's a little bit unusual, but we're working with what we got, and I'd like to thank all of our support people here at the City of Tempe who've done a fine job setting this up. So, the Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days of the Development Review Commission, 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its final decision. So, having said that, let me do some introductions as to who we have in our meeting here. I'm going to do a roll call for our commission. So when I call your name, if you can just announce that you are present, if you are present. Commissioner Tom Brown.
I am present.
Commissioner Don Casano.
Present, sir.
Vice Chair Mike DiDomenico.
Present.
And I am Chairman David Lyon, and to my virtual right, Commissioner Scott Sumners.
Present.
Commissioner Philip Amorosi.
Bill was muted.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Present.
There we are. And Commissioner Andrew Johnson.
I'm here.
Super. All right, so we do not have any ladies with us, so we'll have to limp along tonight, gentlemen. We'll do the best that we can. At least we don't have any female commissioners with us, but we do have some talented ladies with us in the meeting. We have here with us at Council Chambers, Miss Joanna Berry and Miss Aparna Dasgupta, and I'd like to thank you ladies for your fine work tonight. Appreciate you helping to make things move smoothly. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reasonable length agenda tonight. We have a couple of items that we have elected to put on consent agenda, and it is possible for those items to be removed from consent agenda, and we can hear them if you wish to make comment on them. The two cases that we have on that consent agenda are Boondocks and Encanto. Those would be number 1 and 2 on the agenda as we have it written. So here, challenging thing would be, I guess I would at this point normally ask if anyone wished to hear any of those cases. Are we able to look at the chat or the attendee list to see if anyone sort of speaks up and says they'd like to hear one of those? So I guess now would be the time. If you're with us in the meeting and would like to have one of those cases heard, please do a digital hand raise or whatever else it is that you guys do to make yourself known in the chat. And we can pull whichever case it is and hear it.
Chairman, at the bottom of the WebEx meeting, there is a small hand on the right-hand corner. So that's the hand raising for the general public. If anybody from the applicant side or anybody wants to speak, that would be the way to do it.
Okay. I'm getting the sense that we're not going to get any objections, so let's move on. Thank you. So we'll keep our consent agenda as written, and then the remaining items, we're going to hear YOSHI Massage Spa, followed by the Powder Keg, and Transitions Tally Ho Farms was withdrawn by the applicant, so we will not be hearing that. We will then hear Integrative Light Healing, and then Howe Avenue Apartments, and finally, Medical Marijuana Amendment. Okay, so I don't believe I've missed anything this time. That's unusual. So let's go ahead and roll right into our first case, which would be YOSHI Massage. Oh, no, I did forget something. I apologize. See, I always forget something. That's the trick of the meeting. So this time, what I forgot was we have some meeting minutes to consider from previous meetings. So we have regular meeting minutes from January 14 and study session and regular meeting minutes from February 11th. Both of those, or all three of those rather, from 2020, of course. We have reviewed those and found no edits to be made. So Commission, I'd like to hear a motion regarding the approval of those meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, that's Don Casano. Do you want them all in one motion or would you like them separately?
I think we could do it in one fell swoop.
Okay. I would-
Wait, no, we had different
No.
attendance.
That's right.
Okay, so let's do January 1st.
Okay, I would make a motion for approval of the regular meeting minutes with correction noted, January 14th, 2020.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, so motion from Commissioner Casano and seconded by, I'm sorry, which commissioner was that? Who was our second? Was that you, Mr.?
Sumner's was one. I believe there was another as well.
Okay, I'm going to go with Sumner's.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioner Sumner's. Motion from Commissioner Casano and seconded by Commissioner Sumner's. And we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Casano.
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumner's.
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0. So now let's do a motion for the February minutes.
Before we do that, David,
Yes?
did we hear a request for a specific revote on the typographic error because of the 4-3 versus 3-4 on page 11 of the January 14th minutes? I believe Suparna said we've been requested to specifically vote on that. Am I correct?
Chairman and Commissioner Brown, I think just reapproving the minutes for that meeting suffices. The way you voted it will correct the matter.
I understand. I misunderstood something you said earlier. Thank you.
No worries. Appreciate the clarification. All right. May I hear a motion regarding the approval of those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the February 11th study session and regular meeting minutes as drafted.
Okay.
Second, Mr. Chairman, that's Don Casano.
Okay, super. Thank you. So motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Casano. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Was this the February 11th? I'm sorry.
This is the February 11th.
I abstain. I was absent.
Okay. Way to stay on point on that. Commissioner Casano.
Approve. Aye.
Okay. Commissioner, Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumner's.
Abstain.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
That motion passes 5-0 with Commissioners Brown and Sumner's in abstention. All right. So, having done that, we need to move on to our consent agenda. That was two things that I've forgotten today. Thank you for bearing with me, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so now our consent agenda. We have,
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the consent agenda items 1 and 2 as drafted on our agenda.
okay, motion to approve from Vice Chair DiDomenico. Do I hear a second, please?
Second,
Is that Commissioner Amorosi?
yes.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumner's?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Thank you. All right, we're getting right through it. We're working this computer thing out. Okay, so with that, unless I've missed something else, let's move to YOSHI Massage Spa. Now, let me do a couple of notes while everyone's getting ready. One is, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to make comment on one of these cases, we can still accommodate you. It's slightly different than normal, of course, because you can't be here in person. But if you go to tempe.gov /planning, or is that a backslash? I can never keep it straight. /planning. You'll find a button which will allow you to make comment on a Development Review Commission case. So go ahead and push that and fill out the information. We'll be able to get you some time to comment on whichever case you're interested in. Another note would be we're going to do a lot of keeping people on mute just so we don't get a big feedback loop. And so if you are the applicant, what I'm going to suggest to you is that when we call you, we're going to unmute you, and we'll bring up your PowerPoint slide here on our side. And all you need to do is start talking and tell us when you want to go to the next slide. So, having covered those bases, let's look at YOSHI Massage. Do we have our applicant with us?
Chairman, we have Michael Harris from YOSHI Massage.
Okay. Mr. Harris, if you would.
Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners, can you hear me all right, please?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm not so sure we need a slideshow, but in any regard, I am the owner of YOSHI Massage. I bought the establishment a little bit over a year ago from an individual, and I went through the licensing process through the city of Tempe and got the name changed, got all that done. Everything was fine. We find out a couple days after that was approved that the hours, and it's shame on us, we didn't check before, but the hours were not what we expected. The hours in the store, I believe, are 9 in the morning till 7 at night or something like that, with no Sundays. And we, again, shame on us, but we thought they were 7 days a week and up till 9 o'clock at night. We found out that they weren't, obviously, and I asked the city planning department what to do about that, and they said, well, we put up the $1,400 again and go through the process all over again. Not a name change this time, simply a time change and a date change. We have been there for about a year. Everything has been fine. We've been in good standing with the city of Tempe. I think that's probably been verified by your planning department already. Been in the Arizona area for 12 years. We had 3 different massage stores in the city of Glendale. One of them was 12 years ago. I sold that in December of last year. Never at any time ever have any issues of any kind with the city of Glendale. We built a brand new one at Greenway and 67th Street. Happened to be right next to a church that was tied to, believe it or not, to a gun shop and a barber shop. We spent about $50,000, got it all built, put together, made it a very nice store. And those tenants didn't want us as tenants, as neighbors. So for a whole year, and that was open about a year ago as well, and that whole time we've not been open a whole lot because of all the neighbor issues, neighbor problems. And we finally had a situation where the city of Glendale came in and in my book, I say entrapped a contract employee into allegation of prostitution. It was an alleged attempt or something of that nature. At any rate, that was the first time in 12 years we ever had any issues. So, and the licenses of everybody is still intact. The licenses of our 3 stores in Glendale are all fine, or now 2, we sold 1. So what we're asking, and I respect the department's request to do a courtesy continuance based upon what the city of Glendale is going to do. The city of Glendale started their action in September of last year. We obviously hired an attorney because we're of the belief we didn't do anything wrong as a business. The one contract employee that was there, I don't know whatever happened to that lady, but apparently she went to court. So I don't know. We've never seen her again, and I only seen her a couple of days before she got in trouble. The reason we were a little bit slack on our management at the time is the fact that my wife, who was the manager of all the stores, was 2 times last year had to go through cancer surgery, and she was in recovery when that particular person was put in position. And there was a lack of management in the store. I don't believe that would have ever happened, but it did. So, and it's real. I don't deny that there's a charge. I don't deny that the city was upset over that. It's according to my attorney, it's nothing that would damage the business itself. It was a contract employee. The business itself didn't do anything wrong. And I don't know when it's going to ever end, but this virus that's going around right now has put all stores of ours basically out of business for a month and a half to 2 months already. And we have no idea when our governor is going to change the rules so we can practice again. So if we survive the virus, I respectfully request that our request for hours to be extended be approved. If there was to be any, I'm going to say this, if there was to be any revocations of any licenses from the city of Glendale to us, I'll acquiesce to whatever the city of Tempe wants to do, but we don't generate trouble. And again, I don't even know if we're going to ever be able to open with this virus. I don't know what the state's going to do. And I can't go on too long or I'll just go bankrupt. It's the way out. For most of small businesses, everything has been denied by the federal government. There's nothing we can do but sit back and wait and see what happens. We are preparing for being open at some point in time with the proper cleaning agents and masks and temperature gauges and all those things. But so we respectfully request approval of this time change. It's not too radical. It's a couple hours in the evening plus that. There's been a survey, I believe the planning department did. We went out and walked all the stores adjacent to us. I think there was 10, 15, 20 stores, wherever it was, walked them, submitted all that to the planning department. I don't believe anybody's complained. There's other businesses in the area that are open 7 days a week. Actually, one of them's a neighbor, I believe. So again, we would respectfully request approval and send it out our way. If it turns out to be continued for the reasons that the department wants, so be it. I mean, we're not here to argue or deny. Simply requesting approval. Be glad to entertain any questions. I thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Harris? I'd like to suggest to make it a little easier, we could do the little electronic hand raise thing so I can recognize you. Any questions for Mr. Harris? Did you say Tom? Oh, I have to use this mouse. Sorry. There we go. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. So we have 2 cases tonight with massage use permits, yours and one called integrative light massage. And so a couple concerns. You understand, of course, why the public might speak or might be apprehensive and why the police follow these cases. So the first question is your name. You changed the name to YOSHI. Could you explain what that means?
When we bought it, it was YOSHI. We just changed the owner's name, sir. It was YOSHI when we bought it.
Okay, I see. I'm incorrect there. I'm sorry. So the people in the commission, all of us have a certain pet peeves. One of mine is the A-frame signs that a lot of tobacco shops and massage places put out on the sidewalk, which is a code violation. You're familiar with the type. They typically say things like open 7 days. And
Yes,
I want to
sir.
be sure that you understand that that's.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I just want to hear you acknowledge that you understand that's against Tempe's code and that that will not happen in your property?
Well, I was not aware of the code until now, but we've never done that and never have plans to do that, sir.
Okay, yeah, real estate rental people tend to not tell that to their tenants, we understand. But it is a serious issue. We're trying to keep our sidewalks free for pedestrians and free of clutter, which is bad for drivers.
I appreciate that.
So my next question concerns frankly, your action. I didn't realize until now that it was a contract employee. Are all your employees contract employees, or are they certified massage therapists?
We have one manager.
Yes, they're all
that
certified.
floats we have one manager, Commissioner, we have one manager that floats between the three stores when they're open. And whatever employees we have, and it's lately in this last year or so, has only been one employee at a time at each store. And yes, they're contract employees. They're simply paid tips.
They make all their money on tips?
I'm sorry?
You said they make all their money on tips only?
Yes.
Well,
there is there's a fee posted at each store, and a 30-minute massage is $40, of which the attendant, whoever that might be, gets $10 of that, but not in a payroll sense of the word. It's still in a contract as a contract employee, and if it's a 1 hour, they get $20 plus their tips. And
okay,
we don't have any clue what the tips are.
We can set that aside. We're not concerned about the actual fees. I was just surprised that they're dependent on tips. The next question is, are these people all certified massage therapists, or are they anyone who wants to answer the one ahead?
We will only hire Arizona licensed massage therapists, and they have to be certified to get licensed by the state. It's a state of Arizona license. A lot of.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Brown. If you could remember to take that little digital hand down so we can clear that, I'd appreciate that. All right. Any other questions for our applicant?
I am clicking on it and it doesn't.
There you go. Commissioners, any other questions for our applicant? All right, seeing none, let's move on to Mr. Dalton Guerra. Mr. Guerra, are you with us?
Good evening, Chairman Lyon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Dalton Guerra. I'm Planner 1 with the City of Tempe Planning Division. We'll wait for the slide to come up here. There we go. So you can see here, site is in the southeast corner of Rural Road and the 60, or the East Superstition Freeway, in the PCC2 zoning district. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial photo. You can see the blue skinny rectangle there in the center of the aerial image is the suite that we're talking about here. Next slide, please. Here's a floor plan of the existing suite. There are no proposed changes. It is existing to remain. Next slide, please. It's a context photo of the outside of the suite. Next slide, please. There's no neighborhood meeting required, and no public input received up to this point. Next slide, please. And before we get into the recommendation, I just want to go over some brief history. The original use permit was approved by the hearing officer in 2011. It was an approval for the hours of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday, so closed Sundays. And in July of 2019, there was an approved use permit transfer for the same hours, just a change of ownership. So staff had already approved a use permit transfer to maintain those same hours. And now that they want to extend their hours by 2 hours in the evening from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and also be open on Sundays. That's the reason that this request is coming through, is for the extension of the hours. So just some brief history on that. And staff's recommendation is to continue this item to the May 26, 2020 Development Review Commission. to be consistent with PD's concerns and their recommendation for a continuance, staff is fully supportive of Tempe Police Department's request for a continuance. And I'm here if you have any questions. Also, sorry, there's no unique conditions of approval, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay. So I'd like to deal with the issue of continuance in just a moment. But first, let me ask, do any members of our commission have any other questions for Mr. Guerra? All right. Commissioner Brown.
Yes. When a property changes hands like this, is there any review of the interior? For example, the floor plan that I see on the screen or saw on the screen has rooms called hallway, but they're interconnected rooms, which I think is a code issue. And I'm not sure if there are exit signs and so forth. Obviously, this is a hand-sketched plan, and I'm sure the rooms that don't have doors on the plan actually do have doors. I just want to be sure that it's a legit hallway and the exit path is clear.
Well, Commissioner Brown, I do believe we should confine ourselves more to issues directly related to the permit at hand.
Okay.
I see Mr. Abramson would like to say something. Can you share with us, Mr. Abramson?
Thank you, Chairman Lyon, members of the commission. Just want to make it clear that the police department, the rationale behind the request for a continuance and staff's recommendation is that there is a current process occurring in Glendale, and they want to see what the resolution of that process is. And then at that point, it can come back. That was the suggestion of PD, and that is staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Appreciate your chiming in on that. All right, so let's actually get to that one. Commission, I will share with you that I'm inclined to go along with such a request to continue, but this is, well, I'm not the only member of the commission, so let's discuss that. Commissioners, what are your thoughts regarding continuing the case? Commissioner Casano.
After reviewing the information we were given initially and listening to the applicant and understanding that business is closed right now, I'm not so sure that a delay until the end of May would be catastrophic. If anything, it gives it more time for things to settle down with the public contact that would be required in a business like this. But I also think knowing what the disposition is from the city of Glendale would be perhaps more enlightening about this contract employee, since all employees are contract. Even though they may be licensed, we don't know a lot of the details when they'll come out once the hearing is conducted. So it would be my wish to continue this until the end of May.
Thank you. Commissioner Amorosi. I still have you on mute, Commissioner Amorosi.
Got to keep remembering to unclick that.
Right.
Yes, I would have to agree with the staff recommendation to continue this till the May 26th hearing. It's less than a month away, and we still don't know if people are going to be allowed to get massages by May 26th. So I don't think there'll be any harm or foul.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson.
I'm in agreement with the continuance on this one.
Okay. Great. Any other thoughts before we do something that looks like a motion? All right. Seeing none, I will remind everyone, please unclick your hand so it goes away. And then I'd like to hear a motion regarding a continuance for this case.
Mr. Chairman, this is Don Casano. Do we have a date for the Glendale hearing in May, so that we know that this will be okay at our next meeting in May, or do we have to push it till June?
Was that Mr. Garrett, what was the date on that again? I thought I saw.
Chairman Lyon, the Tempe Police Department just said it was scheduled for mid-May.
Okay,
It's a
mid-May
pending
then.
appeal hearing, so we don't have a date specific for that, but it's mid-May.
Okay, then our meeting should be okay. So thanks for the clarification.
Okay, so let's hear some sort of a motion regarding a continuance. That could be in favor or opposed, either way.
Mr. Chairman, this is Don Casano. I would make a motion to continue this item until the May Design Review Board Commission meeting.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second, Phil Amorosi.
All right. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumners?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Okay, so that motion passes 7-0. So, ladies and gentlemen, and Mr. Harris, we thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing again on May 26th. Hopefully, Glendale can get its ducks in a row by that point and give us their thoughts. All right.
Chairman, before we move on to the next agenda, I just want to put it on the record that Mr. Mike Fellows joined us in the comment card after the consent agenda was approved for the Encanto project, but he is in support of the project, so I just wanted to make sure that that gets on the record.
Okay, he's in support of the Encanto project.
Yes, and he is okay with not having to speak. I checked with him
Okay.
already.
Well, we appreciate your support. Thank you, Ms. Dasgupta. All right, so I guess I ought to ask, did we have anyone from the public that wished to make comment on YOSHI Massage? We did vote to continue, but since we may have somebody who wished to speak on the case, did anyone wish to make comment on YOSHI Massage?
No, no.
Okay.
No, Chairman, no one.
All right. In that case, we'll move on to the powder keg.
Chairman, the applicant's name is John Gittes. I hope I'm saying it right, but Joanna will, okay. He's ready to present.
All right, Mr. Gittes.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was under the understanding that Lee Jimenez was going to be reviewing those slides and then I'd be speaking, or am I speaking first?
Sorry if there's any confusion. We typically like to ask our applicant to present first, followed by city staff. But I would not be opposed to doing it the other way if you were not prepared to do so. Do you wish to speak after Mr. Jimenez?
That would be great if I could go after. Appreciate
Okay.
that.
Yeah, give you a couple extra minutes to get your thoughts in a row. So, do
Thank
we
you.
have Mr. Jimenez? Okay, I see Mr. Jimenez with his hand up but muted. Mr. Jimenez, you may need to mute your speakers. I don't know if that's part of a feedback loop.
Okay.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was logged on my computer and my phone, and I think the wrong account was elevated. Nevertheless,
I see.
my name is Lee Jimenez. I'm a senior planner with the Community Development Department in the Planning Division. So good evening, Commission, Chair Lyon, Vice Chair DiDomenico. Tonight is a request for the Powder Keg, who is proposing to operate in Suite E103 of the town, or I'm sorry, of the Mill Town Center, which is located on the south side of East Baseline Road between South Mill and College Avenues in the PCC1 Planned Commercial Center Neighborhood District. The applicant is requesting, next slide, please. The applicant is requesting a use permit to operate a concierge-style gun shop, in which clients schedule visits to view and purchase from a curated collection of higher-end firearms and accessories. Next slide. The suite is located on the first floor of Building E which is located at the center of the shopping center. Next slide. The gun shop is approximately 250 square feet and concealed within the applicant's primary business, which is a kitchen and bathroom remodel showroom. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the storefront will remain unchanged. There's no signage for the gun shop. Next slide, please. There's no neighborhood meeting required for this request. I did receive an email in support, which was provided in the attachments. The letter of support comes from a similar business who's also located in the same shopping center, who supports the use permit request. And then I also did receive on Monday a letter of opposition from a property owner nearby. I did get an email from her. She was trying to connect to the meeting, but was unfortunately unable to do so. So in lieu of her speaking, I told her that I could provide her statement into the record. So the email is from Joyce Herr. She says, "I'm totally against a gun shop being introduced into our neighborhood. It would be a poor reflection on the area. This is a decent but non-affluent neighborhood, and I feel it is important to try to raise the area rather than introducing businesses such as gun shops, loan sharks, etc. I definitely feel that property values are influenced by the businesses in the area. The proximity to ASU is a positive influence where areas questionable businesses drag down property values. I feel that it is the responsibility of Tempe government to do so, what is in the interest of keeping property values up, especially in such trying economic times." Next slide, please.
Mr. Jimenez, before you move on, if I heard you correctly, you said the email in support was from a similar business. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's from JDR Guns, which has a use permit that was approved last spring, back in 2018. If you refer to the staff report in the history and facts section, you'll note that the latest or the second latest date on that list identifies that approved use permit.
Okay, and is that also a non-storefront, non-sign concierge gun facility?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry, please continue.
No problem. So staff's recommending approval subject to the conditions. The standards of conditions, the conditions of approval are all standard. The only issue I have is I need to make a correction to condition of approval number 4. I inadvertently left the date to contact the Tempe Crime Prevention Unit from the original hearing date. So that was 30 days from now, or from then. So now I'd like to correct that so that condition number 4 reads that the applicant shall contact the City of Tempe Crime Prevention Unit within 30 days of this approval to schedule a complete site inspection to determine if a security plan is required to operate the business, and then contact 480-858-6409 before May 28th, 2020, and not April 23rd, 2020. So that is a staff correction. And with all that said, based on the information provided by the applicant, the public input received, the analysis provided in the staff summary report, staff supports the use permit request and believes it meets the required criteria and will conform to the conditions. And that's all I have.
All right, Commission, any questions for Mr. Jimenez? Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Lee, just one question. Can you go back to the handout that shows the site plan? I think it's 31, page 31.
Yes, if you can go back to that slide, please. Can we pull this? PowerPoint slides back up. Okay.
Next page, 31.
Oh, the floor plan?
There we go. The western wall, the demising wall between this suite and the next, can you describe the construction there? Is this a party wall or is this just a stud and drywall demising wall?
From the other suite or from within the suite?
The western demising wall between latitude 33 or the gun room itself, the showroom, and the tenant to the west.
I am unfamiliar with the inside of the floor plan. I think that question can be best answered by the applicant.
Will do. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. And this may be a question for the applicant as well, but I'll just go ahead and ask it in case. Out of curiosity, I don't know a lot about gun stores, and we haven't had very many, if any, since I've been on the commission. Are there background checks required for this type of firearm transfer?
To answer your question, there is a clearance that's required by the ATF. And Steve, if you can please add as far as the process involved with obtaining that license to obtain or to sell firearms and purchase firearms.
Thank you, Lee. Chairman Lyon, Vice Chair DiDomenico, members of the commission. The owner had to go through an ATF background check, as Lee had indicated. Further, I actually met on site with 3 members of the Tempe Police Department. One was resale division, one was a detective, and one was a firearms expert. All of them concurred that this was a good use if it gets a security plan. That was their only condition. And yeah, to be honest with you, police department will scour the background of the applicant if they haven't done so already. Any additional questions?
Well, my question actually was more specific to those purchasing weapons, guns at the store.
Well, they would have the 24 or the background check. I don't know, what is that, 72 hours? It's operated like a normal gun store would be with the sale and transfer of firearms. That's required by the ATF, and Mr. Geddes can best answer to that question.
Commissioner Johnson, the applicant does identify that he will be following and complying with all local, state, and federal licensing and reporting requirements, in particular the ATF rules with firearms transfers. And he can probably expand on that.
That was my question. I wasn't familiar with the term firearm transfers. I didn't know if that was representative of a typical gun store, how they make sales of firearms, or if that was a different type, because I haven't seen this style of store before. I've seen, typical gun sales stores, but I haven't seen one that's secluded and concealed back in the back of another business. And I don't know how that would work if this is kind of a secondhand gun transfers. So I didn't know if there were different rules for different types of businesses.
And also, just to clarify, I said that last year there was an approved use permit, and I stand corrected. It was actually 2 years ago, back in March 6, 2018. The hearing officer approved a use permit to allow a gun shop for JDR guns, which is located in this same shopping center at 209 East Baseline in Suite E209. So that's the other building further to the west, I believe.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Jimenez? right. Seeing none, we will thank you, Mr. Jimenez, and let's move on to Mr. Gittes. If you can tell us about your application, please.
Yes, can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes.
I wanted to go back and answer the question from the commissioner about the background check requirement. There absolutely is background checks through the federal NICS system, just as any gun store would have. So all customers would be run through that same process, no different than any other gun shop, and we'd have to have the FBI approval before transferring any of those firearms. If anybody has any questions on that, I'd be happy to clarify that more. And then I wanted to, I prepared a small PowerPoint in response to Ms. Herr's concern, just to kind of explain, it's a valid concern, and I figured I would provide some information on that. So in March of 2018, JDR Guns received their use permit. In April of 2018, Alpha Dog is in the same complex, received theirs. They are located, as well as my shop would be located in the zip code of 85283. So I had a realtor do an MLS search of the market data 1 year prior to both of those use permits being approved and 1 year after. So from March 1st, 2017 to March 1st, 2018, the average house sold for an average of $158.34 per square foot. The year following both gun shops being approved and open, the values went up to $172.42 per square foot price sold. That's an increase in price per square foot sold of 8.9%. So the houses did go up in value after both gun stores were approved. Next slide, please. Again, we have the year prior and the year after the gun shop's opening. The days on the market of houses dropped by 15.9%, meaning the houses were sold faster following the gun shops both being active. Next slide, please. There were less properties closed after the gun shops, indicating that less people moved out of the area. So the area did not become less desirable based on those two gun shops opening in the same area. Next slide, please. And this is just a summary of the three comparisons. Again, just in summary, the average price per square foot increased after the gun shops were open. The houses were on the market less time, and less people moved out of the area. The MLS data reports were used in gathering this and are available upon request. And so that is all I have prepared in response to Ms. Herr's concern about property values decreasing based on a firearm shop being added to the area.
It's quite thorough, actually. All right. Well, what else do you have for us, Mr. Gittes? You want to tell us more about your application directly?
Yeah, one last thing, if I could address there's condition of approval, and it said contact crime prevention unit. I did have, as Mr. Abramson spoke, I did have the Tempe PD property detectives, I'm not sure, there were 3 of them there, along with the fire marshal. They went through and did make a couple recommendations for security. Those were addressed that afternoon and forwarded back to them. And so that has been already taken care of.
All right.
And then were there any other questions I'd be happy to answer?
All right. Let's go to Commissioner Casano first, please.
Mr. Gittes, when you gave the 85283 MLS information, were those properties that were near these locations, or that was just 85283 in general?
That was 852 and 85283 in its entirety.
Okay, which covers a very large area. And I think she was talking more specifically about the area close to where the business is located. That was just a point of clarification I had. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner
Thank
Brown.
you.
Commissioner Brown, please. Commissioner Brown, if you are intending to speak, we still see you as muted.
I'm sorry, I learned that from Phil. I apologize.
All right. Take two.
Okay, Mr. Geddes, we had a pawn shop case a couple of years ago, and I was surprised to learn that guns were test fired in this pawn shop, which happened to be across the street, or was proposed across the street from a sensitive use, and it was denied. You were on the first floor of a building which I believe is wood frame. Do you allow your customers to test fire the weapons inside your shop?
Absolutely not. Nor am I a pawn shop.
I recognize that, and I appreciate that you do not test fire there. I think it'd be disturbing for tenants. That's my only question. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Other questions for our applicant? Seeing none, I'd like to, got one more. Commissioner Casano. Is that a fresh question, Mr. Casano?
Vice Chairman DiDomenico had asked a question, I think it was about the west wall, the construction of that western wall. Am I correct with that?
Yes, that is a stud-framed wall with drywall.
Okay. Just wanted if there was any clarification of that. So as far as a security issue, somebody coming through that wall into where the firearms are, wouldn't take much, I would imagine.
There are more securities and measures in place that I had discussed and walked with the Tempe police. I'd prefer not to put those in a public setting.
Okay.
As you can imagine.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, he's going to have to follow the requirements that City of Tempe Police give him regarding the securing those firearms. Vice Chair DiDomenico.
That's why I dropped the question. I didn't really want to have once I found out that there's going to be a walk and a security plan put in place later on, I figured we didn't need to publish and show on video a discussion of the security.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. That's good stuff. Mr. Giddis, I'd like to say that I don't think I've seen anyone take quite as direct or analytical approach to answering a criticism as your MLS research. So I appreciate that. I'm not certain that it's quite as scientific as it looks, but I'll say I don't think I needed to be swayed anyway. But I do just want to say thank you for doing that. It's an impressive effort.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's a valid concern, and I wanted to make sure I don't want to be at odds with anybody around me, so I wanted to make sure that she's aware that she can see that data for herself.
Sure, sure. All right, so I don't think we have any more questions, so we will thank you, Mr. Giddis. At this time, I'm going to look to city staff. Do we have anyone who wishes to make comment on this case?
We had received one public comment previously, but not anything live at this time.
Okay,
Chairman.
so nothing new to add to the record then. No. All right. Ordinarily, we'd offer you, Mr. Giddis, an opportunity to respond to anything that you've heard from the public, but being that there has been no public comment, I'll give you just one last chance if there's anything else you'd like to add. Mr. Giddis, please. Sorry, she needs to unmute you quickly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for your time and for putting this together, even though we can't meet in person. I appreciate it.
All right, good stuff. Thank you. All right, Commission, what are your thoughts? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I would recommend approval of the use permit for the powder keg PL 200041.
All right, before we move on to the motion, is there anyone that wishes to make comment before we get into our motion? Seeing none, let's just move ahead with that motion then. Motion to approve from Commissioner Amorosi. Do I hear a second, please?
I'll second.
All right.
Aye.
Seconded by Vice Chair DiDomenico, and now let's vote by way of roll call, because that's what we're doing tonight. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumners?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Nay.
All right, so the motion passes 6-1 with Commissioner Johnson in dissent. Thank you, Mr. Gittes. And let's move on then to integrative light healing. And I gotta pull that one up on one of my many screens here. I have 4 screens in front of me that I'm working on, believe it or not, folks. All right, so do we have Lance Martinez? All right, Mr. Martinez, are you there?
Present.
All right. Yeah, if you would tell us about your application, please.
Great. So glad to be here today. I just got to go to my notes. I don't remember everybody's name. So Chairman Lyon and Commission, thank you for allowing me to be present today. It's kind of my first time at this, so as far as presenting in this style. So I'm the owner-operator, Lance Martinez, Integrative Light Healing, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So it is a place that allows for restructural massage therapy. We do stretch therapy, meditation, breath work, life coaching, and Reiki healing. Next slide. Project location, we're located over at 4651 South Lakeshore Drive in Suite 3. And it shares a prominent area of business known as Lakeshore Gardens. Next slide. Easy access. Lakeshore Gardens has the easy point of entry from the reaches of the US 60 bordering the main roads of rural and baseline. Next slide. Lakeshore Gardens and its tenants have pioneered a comfort zone for the healing community. Health and medical in the area range from chiropractic, naturopathic, mental health, weight loss, stretch therapy, and physical therapy. Next slide. Listed a couple of the few of the current tenants in the area. Bodywise Chiropractic. It's important to note that Bodywise Chiropractic currently has a chiropractor. They have 3 licensed massage therapists. And some of those massage therapists are also stretch therapists, and they are within about 20-foot walking distance of myself. Arizona Integrative Medical Solutions has several naturopathic doctors, and the continuing businesses that we see here: Men's Vitality Center, PSA Behavioral Health Agency, Empowering Body Wellness. I have not quite networked those companies yet. I'm just aware of their presence in the area. Next slide. So I am the owner-operator. Just figured to put a name to the face since I was going to be present there. So I have 10 years experience as a licensed massage therapist. 8 years as a professor at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. So I don't want to dissuade anybody to think that I still work there. I did resign my position at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts back in 2018. I've been I don't know if this is the correct wording, but I called it a storefront business owner of 5 years. So Integrative Light Healing first created its establishment in the city of Mesa, in which I achieved all licensing and permits that were needed for that area. I've been a successful sole proprietor business in that area, and was looking to move my business over into Tempe. Me and my lady, we have a house here right in Tempe on 9th Street. We love it. So just trying to see if we can bring more business to the community. And so next slide. So commitment to service. Integrative Light Healings follows a high standards of general practice that meet or exceed legal requirements set forth by the City of Tempe, State of Arizona, Arizona Board of Massage, and the National Certification Board for Therapeutic Massage and Body Work. Next slide. And beautiful Arizona sunset. So ultimately, as a background of what my business looks to create, the only people that are going to be present there working, doing massage therapy are licensed massage therapists. By the suite design sitting at around 750 square feet, it currently has 2 offices within the suite, in which Adrian will give you more information on that in a little bit. I am going to be bringing on a subcontractor, which would limit to a maximum, again, of only 2 therapists working at a time. The user permit filed for hours of operation to be from 7 days a week. Ideally, though, being transparent on my current business model, I generally usually just see clients from Monday through Friday. The uniqueness about integrative light healing is it is by appointment only. So with this, I'm going to answer Tom's question ahead of time that you will not have any type of signage, gaudy signage that's going to be out there. I'm very thankful that the city of Tempe does not require any type of postings of that sort. My suite will have just very clear-cut, gentle signage that's posted as a decal on the front door of the suite. And as far as the outskirts of Lakeshore Gardens, Paul Corain, owner and on the HOA committee of Lakeshore Gardens, he is in the process of working to see if integrative light healing will be able to be present on the outside sign that has general businesses listed. I might add too that integrative light healing on the actual signage that's going to be part of Lakeshore Gardens does not say massage. So it will say just integrative light healing. Some of you might be asking, well, what is exactly integrative light healing? What does that mean? My profession skill background brings a combination of allopathic medicine, naturopathic medicine, and I am an esoteric believer in working with energy work. So I range from a clientele of spiritualists to people that are needing to rehab their shoulder. Thus, we use a combination of different tools to meet their needs of where they come to. Back to the hours again, Saturday and Sunday. I did request Adrian to leave Saturday and Sunday as a potential open business. Again, my business design and for my employees is designed to try and see people Monday through Friday because we have families. I have a little girl, she's 8 years old. I love to be home with her, love to be home with my lady. But sometimes people are in pain, so I didn't want to restrict my business from not being able to operate on Saturday and Sunday in case there's any questions on what the 7 days a week applies to us. And so with that, I appreciate the board's consideration and look forward to being a business contributor to Tempe. Thank you.
Super. Do we have any questions for Mr. Martinez? Commissioner Brown.
I simply want to thank him for answering my questions ahead of time. I think his presentation was very clear, and I wish him luck.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Any other questions, please? All right, Commission, let's move on then. Do we have Adrian Zambrano?
Yes, I'm present, Chairman Lyon.
All right, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. So my name's Adrian Zambrano. I'm Planner 1 with the Community Development Department Planning Division. So the request is, again, for integrative light healing for a use permit to allow massage establishment. And it's located along Lakeshore Drive to the east of Rural Road and to the north of Baseline Road in the PCC2 Planned Commercial Center General District. And next slide. So this is just some background of the business and the request. I think Lance covered most of it. The business has an existing location in Mesa with approximately 11 years of Tempe clientele. Massage therapists would be subcontracted and licensed and would be by appointment only. And they would provide additional services, as Lance mentioned. And the hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. Next slide. And this is the site plan that the applicant provided, just giving some context of where the site's located at. And this is a floor plan that was provided by the applicant. So the suite area is 762 square feet, and the entrance to the suite is located along the west side of the suite. And there was no neighborhood meeting required for this type of request, and staff has not received any public input to date. And then just to go over the approval criteria for a use permit. For approval criteria A, the proposed use would have minimal staff and clientele on site at any one time and will not have any significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. For approval criteria B, all businesses being conducted indoors and noise will not exceed ambient conditions. For approval criteria C, the massage establishments are a permitted use subject to a use permit in the PCC2 district. And approval criteria D, the proposed use is a holistic medicine practice, which is compatible with surrounding medicine practice uses, in addition to existing massage establishments nearby. And lastly, approval criteria E, the business will be conducted indoors, and Tempe Police has no concerns with this use being proposed at this location. Next slide. In conclusion, the staff recommendation is to approve the request subject to conditions, and the conditions of approval are all standard conditions. There are no unique conditions of approval.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Zambrana?
I believe that's all, Chairman Lyon. Thank you.
All right. So do we have any questions for Mr. Zambrana? Seeing none, we will thank you. That was well presented. Appreciate that. And let's turn now to see if we have any public comment.
Chairman, we do not have any live comments.
All right. So we'll come back to Mr. Martinez and give you a second crack at it if you like. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we're good to go. I'm just crossing my fingers because I want to help people. It's rewarding.
Fair enough.
Get back to work.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. So, Commission, your thoughts, discussion? Any comments? You're not very chatty tonight, so let's move on to a motion. I think I know what you're going to do, so let's hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mike. I move for approval of PL 200058 with conditions of approval as outlined in our packet. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would second that motion.
All right. And
Don
now,
Casano.
thank you, Commissioner Casano. I also saw Commissioner Amorosi and Commissioner Johnson put their hands up politely. Did you have comments, or were you also making motion?
Phil Amorosi, I was going to make a motion. That's
All right. Commissioner Johnson?
Same thing here.
All right. All right. Fair enough. Appreciate that. All right. So we have a motion approved from Vice Chair DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Don Casano. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumners?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. So with that, let's move on to Howe Avenue Apartments, please.
Chairman, we have Mr. Nate Markey as the applicant, and we will let him introduce his team.
All right. Are you, sorry, tongue-tied. Only happens when I speak, though. Mr. Maki, are you with us? I believe you're unmuted now. Are you with us, Mr. Maki?
I am with you. Can you hear me now?
Yes. And have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yes, it's Mackie. That's
Okay.
good.
All right. Fair enough.
So
All right.
I am with Roman Architects, and for our presentation, Xavier is going to be running the presentation. Can you unmute Xavier?
I believe Xavier is unmuted as well.
Hello?
Yes,
All right. I'm coming through clear?
you are.
Okay. Good evening. I'm going to be presenting for the Howe Avenue Apartments. We're requesting two things today, the approval of the ER and a use permit. Can you please go to the next slide. Currently, there is an existing portion of our project. If you look at the zoning map, the blue square where the arrow is pointing, that is existing. And we are proposing to expand into the blue rectangular square directly to the west or slightly to the left, connecting. Originally, both of these were vacant lots. And go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. We are proposing the addition of 3 new buildings or 12 new units to match the existing. The new site will be fully landscaped with on-site amenities. And then first I'll be going over the use permit points. The existing portion of the project is the gray square on the proposed site plan, that on the right portion of the screen. That includes 4 existing buildings with 18 units. The new portion is in peach with the 3 buildings and the 12 units. As determined by the staff, the front of this complex will be along Price Road, going north to south, making our rear of the project along the west end of the property. If you see to the right, the enlarged site plan shows a highlighted blue area. That is a public utility easement. And we are requesting a 3-foot reduction in the rear building setback from 15 feet to 12 feet so that our 3 buildings can be within the building envelope. And then I'll be going over the 5 use permit requirements or required points. First, the first point, requested point to address is no significant increase in vehicular or pedestrian traffic. Moving those 3 buildings has no effect on that, so we don't see any change there. Point number 2, the development will not emit odor, dust, gas, noise, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare at a level exceeding that of ambient conditions. Again, shifting over those 3 buildings should have no effect on those. And there will be added landscape buffer along the all sides of the property, so that will create a buffer both visually and for noise. Number 3, the development would not contribute to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the downgrading of property values, but will beautify the area and increase property. This development is going into what at one point were several vacant lots. So we will be adding beautifying characteristics to this. And we do expect the property values to rise going from vacant lots. Number 4, the development is compatible with existing surrounding structures and uses. If you could please go to the next slide. Here you see a map of existing construction going on that has both been approved and is of similar use. You see our project, the existing portion. There's a picture of what is currently on site. It would be the top middle picture. I have also highlighted in yellow the light rail route, in blue the park and ride area, and the red dot is the nearest bus stop. So we believe that our project fits in with what is currently being approved by the city of Tempe. And number 5, there's adequate controls for disruptive behavior both inside and outside of the development, which may create a nuisance for the surrounding area or general public. The change in the building setbacks would have no effect on what we have planned for security controls or the inward design of the community activities. So we believe that our proposal meets these points. If you could go to the next slide. This is just a written version of what we just went over. Please go to the next slide. Here, to save time, I won't go over the 12 points for the DR request, but I'll just speak in general for the completed project design. Here we can see again, the 4 existing units, the 4 existing buildings in gray, and the 3 new buildings that we are proposing in the orange peach color. You can see the spa and pool location in the blue squares in the central location for the complex. We are also adding a bocce ball court, a dog park on either side of the main entry running east to west. You can see those. I don't know if you can read that on your screen, but it's on the south and north side of that driveway. There are seating areas throughout this project for our residents to enjoy. The paths that connect the whole project are out of concrete pavers. There is covered parking throughout this whole project. There's also bike parking for guests, or if the residents want to use that. The entries to the site also have pavers. The first 20 feet will use pavers, and the site will also be fully landscaped. Next slide, please. Here we see the floor plans to our units. On the right, it's the first floor unit plan with 3 bedrooms. To the left, it's the second floor unit that only has 2 bedrooms. And these layouts are the same as what is existing on site. Next slide, please. Here at the top, you see the exterior design for the elevations. Again, these match what is currently on site. We will only be expanding upon that by adding more of the same. The materials will be colored stucco and colored CMU of varying textures. There will also be corrugated metal panels that, and there will also be balconies and metal overhangs. Bottom 2 rows show what the streetscapes will look like with the lush vegetation and what the building faces will look from the street. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the 3D rendering showing what the finished product will look like. Again, matching what is existing. And in conclusion, we believe that our project meets all of the requirements for design review and use permit requests. Are there any questions? I believe there were.
All right, Commission. Any questions for our applicant? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I'm curious why they changed the color to orange as compared to the original was gray. It's all the same complex. Why they aren't all the same color?
I think that's a matter of how the sun plays with it. once the sun hits it, the color lines up. But everything should be the same. Everything matches what the construction document says and has.
So I had a difficult time hearing Commissioner Amorosi's question, but I believe he was asking if the colors in this phase were different than the existing phase. Is that right, Commissioner Amorosi?
Correct. It looks like these are colored and the others are gray.
So are these in fact different colors than the phase one?
No.
Oh, it is a match for phase one.
Yeah, I believe it's just how the sun hits it. And then when the sun, is on the color, on the face of it, it'll lighten up the colors.
All right.
But yeah, everything should be the same.
All right. Thank you. I'm glad that you changed the direction of the buildings that face Howell, too. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Other questions for our applicant? All right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on and ask Ms. Kaminsky to tell us about the project.
The City of Tempe. Good evening. We're waiting for the slide there. This request is for the use permit to reduce the rear yard setback from 15 to 12 feet and the development plan review for the additional 12-unit apartment community to the existing 18 units. As the applicant mentioned, the site to the east of this is already built. They're working on getting C of O right now. This owner purchased the property from someone else who had gone through the entitlement process with the commission, had actually started construction and then stopped. So the new owner picked up that project and has worked towards finishing that, and in the meantime purchased the lot to the west to continue with the same design of the project. Next slide, please. So I was able to go out and see some of the construction on site and verify the colors. I know that the elevations and the renderings don't quite match what you see in the actual field photos. However, they are matched in terms of the entitled colors from the first phase and what is shown on the construction documents. So I think that is just a play of natural light versus what you see in a rendering on the plans. But this shows you the context of the surrounding area. Next slide, please. It's important to note that the individual lot that's shown in red on the west, if this were developed by itself, would have a frontage on Howe, and the west side would be a side setback of 10 feet in the R3 zoning district. However, because this is incorporated into the other lot to the east, the blue square, that changes the frontage of their property to be on Price, and that's what caused the change in the rear yard to go from 15. And because of the existing underground utilities on the east and south side, they weren't able to shift the buildings to accommodate that extra 3 feet. So that's why the request for the use permit standard. It's because by combining these lots, it creates a new front yard. Next slide, please. I did provide an analysis of each of the criteria for a use permit standard. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but staff did find that this request met all of the criteria for a use permit standard. Next slide. And next slide. We do find that it's compatible with adjacent properties. There are two-story structures right next door, and the setbacks vary depending on the zoning district. Some of them have 5-foot setbacks and some of them have 10. So it is compatible with the surrounding structures. Next slide, please. And next slide. These are the standards for this lot. Staff did do an amendment, a minor development plan review approval for the landscape modifications that were made to the east lot. When they came in with the application for this new western lot, they wanted to integrate the landscape between the two sites. So that has already been done administratively, contingent upon this approval for the west side. Next slide. Here is the proposed landscape. They did make modifications from the original entitlements, enhancing the street frontage along Howe with significant amount of shade trees, and then also along Price with trees of a different variety to create a different character along that frontage. They are limited to shrubs only on the southern border of the red lot, the west side, because of the existing water line easement. So they have some taller shrubs along that south side, but they don't have any trees along that southern border. Next slide. As the applicant indicated, they are matching the existing elevation architectural style, colors, and materials. So we really didn't have to do a whole lot of analysis on this part of the project. Next slide. And these are the renderings. Next slide. There was no neighborhood meeting required for this request. There was one call of inquiry actually about the construction on the east side, just wanting to know what was happening. We are recommending approval of the project subject to conditions, and the applicant has reviewed those conditions. Next slide. We did have an advantage in being able to see the existing construction on the east side. And as a result of doing a field study, there were conditions added to address some of the concerns that we saw. In the case of fencing, all of the fencing originally specified was at a 6-foot height all along these patios, wrapping them in a wire fence, in some cases within 12 inches of an existing CMU wall. So we've worked with the property owner and the applicant to actually lower some of those existing fences on the eastern side to create a more open environment, so it's less cage-like. If any of you visited the site, you may have seen that. So they are willing to make those changes to make a better improvement to the patio experience for the residents. Next slide. They were asking for a deferral. There was a condition from the first phase that they provide these parking shade canopies in the parking lot. They've asked for a deferral on that so that all of the canopies may be installed at the same time. And that's what this condition is about. Next slide. One thing that was noted in the field, if you look at the photo of the actual construction, is the privacy screen walls between the two units on the upper floor and the balconies was omitted in the first eastern side construction. So the renderings and the elevations, all as entitled, had this privacy screen wall. And so we are conditioning that when they complete this project, that all 30 units have that same consistent privacy screen between the balconies. Next slide. Oh, I guess that's it. So that's all of the special conditions, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
All right, Commission, any questions for Ms. Kaminsky? Commissioner Brown.
Good evening, Diana. I was going to ask about some of the remediations, which you just explained very well. And am I correct that the present owner perhaps inherited those from the previous person who did not complete the construction?
At the point that he purchased the property, there were foundations poured and conduits sticking out of the ground, but everything from the ground up was from this contractor's work. I don't know what changes were made in the fields, what changes might have been made on the construction drawings themselves. But we did make note of some of those things, and the inspectors who were working on the eastern side, are rectifying some of those modifications in the field as part of their C of O.
Okay, so that'll all be checked. When you do a final walkthrough, that'll be in compliance, I believe, and
yes,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that being improved. On the binder that we received by email, the landscape plan did not include the key of the tree types, but I saw it on the image that what you just showed, and I'm pleased that they're using some citrus, and that the landscaping looks relatively lush, and I'm pleased that it's being completed by someone who took on a project that was apparently abandoned.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for Ms. Kaminsky? Seeing none, we will thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
All right. Public comment. Anyone in the queue for us?
Chairman, we do not have any.
Oh, boy, I tell you, I was looking forward to some public comments here. All right, so we'll come back to our applicant then. And if you want to take one last crack at it, anything that you'd like to add or respond to, you're welcome to. Getting some interesting sounds there. Mr. Mackey, are you with us? Or Xavier?
I'm here. There's Xavier.
Okay. Would you wish to respond to anything that you've heard, or is there anything you wish to add to your application at this time?
No, nothing at this time.
All right. Well, thank you then, and let's go to our commissioner discussion. Commissioners, any comments? You're so quiet tonight. All right. Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I just want to say that I'm glad Mr. or I guess it's Choya Sassini took this over, and Mr. Mackey did a good job increasing the landscaping and the amenities for the complex, and I think that's going to help that neighborhood a lot. So I will be recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Amorosi. I will say we took the time to hear the bulk of our agenda tonight, and then we said very little and asked very little about these cases. So I would suggest that when we hear these cases, that if we have a concern, we raise them. Otherwise, we may let a few more of them get on consent if we don't have any concerns. So any other thoughts on this case? Well, let's hear a motion then. Let's do by hand this time. Yeah, we're going to do it the polite method here. Commissioner Amorosi is actually waving his hand. Do you wish to make a motion?
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. I make a motion to approve the Howell Avenue Apartments PL 200047 with the subject to the conditions that were put in there by staff.
All right, Commissioner Johnson, do you have something to add?
I would like to second.
All right, fair enough. So motion to approve with conditions as mentioned by Commissioner Amorosi and seconded by Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Casano?
Aye.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Commissioner Sumners?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Boy, we're easy, huh? All right, 7-0, the motion is approved, and we will thank our applicant. So that leads us to our final case for the evening, medical marijuana amendment. And who do we hear from first on this one?
Mr. Chairman, we can go either way. We have our staff presentation, Karen Stovall, with the senior planner, and we also have applicant, Mr. McLaren, on the line too.
Let's ask Mr. McLaren if you'd like to speak. Are you with us, Mr. McLaren?
I am here. Hi, good evening, Chair Lyon and Commission members. I might defer to Karen Stovall. I'm happy to present first, but I know she had some history of background. If that's something she was planning on sharing, that context might be helpful. It's a relatively simple presentation, so at your preference, happy to go first or second.
All right, I appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind obliging us and going first, that would be great.
All right, wait for the slide deck to come up here.
I see some puzzled looks about the slide deck around council chambers.
So it would have been a separate PDF submitted. I can also make comments generally if it's not on file.
Give me 1 second. Do we have the right thing on screen then? A separate PDF?
Would have a cover page with zoned properties with orange and black design.
It looks like we do not have that. I'm not sure where we missed that one. Um, Is this something that you're able to comment on without?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem. It was relatively straightforward. I know these things tend to be long meetings, so I'll keep it relatively brief with the primary focus on having myself available for any questions. I've been before this body several times in the past while working with local staff and representatives, and first just wanted to voice my appreciation. I've personally been at this from the real estate and sustainability side. I am the CEO of Zoned Properties, a local real estate company here, and we work directly with operators in the medical marijuana space. We do not operate ourselves. We are a property owner in Tempe that does lease space out to licensed medical marijuana operators and have been working with local staff in Tempe and multiple other municipalities on how best to navigate some of these code and compliance regulatory matters over the years. So to start, just my appreciation for Tempe staff and representatives. It's been, especially compared to other municipalities, a very objective and fair approach from my perspective. So very thankful for being able to participate in that collaboration. The proposed amendment that's before you today is relatively straightforward. I know this body and the City Council has discussed these items over the years and recently had considered and approved a similar simple amendment on the dispensary code side regarding hours. This proposed code amendment is simply to remove the size restriction on the licensed cultivation facilities. In materials provided by staff, and you may have our letter of rationale and background in front of you. If not, I'll simply go through some of the background research we did when preparing this submittal for the proposed code text amendment. We initially started by looking at what peer and surrounding municipalities in Arizona, as well as in other states, included physical size restrictions, square footage restrictions on cultivation sites. And for full disclosure, while we do own and represent clients, we are presenting this code text amendment specifically on behalf of one of your local licensed businesses. So in that research process, we initially intended to actually suggest an amendment that would just simply increase that 25,000 square foot restriction to something larger. But upon learning that a majority of municipalities that are larger and peer to Tempe did not have any restriction, we decided that it might be better to approach this by looking at a similar standardized type of code, which is what we suggested simply by striking through the line item in the code that included that maximum square footage. But you'll see in the table provided both by staff and in our letter, there are other municipalities that do remain to have a code restriction on size, including Mesa, which is equal to Tempe's current of 25,000, and Chandler and Gilbert, both at quite smaller restrictions at about 3,000 square feet. And just for a little background for commission members, in many of the states, I tend to find when we're working with municipalities on code amendments or zoning and regulatory language, they typically tend to polarize between kind of something quite smaller like you'd see at Chandler and Gilbert, which I think is far more focused on keeping what you might call a caregiver cultivation facility, which is allowed under some state laws to grow unlicensed plants. And many of the municipalities we spoke with were fearful of that in the early stages, which is why you see some of those smaller square footage restrictions. Most of the municipalities that have enacted more comprehensive and objective regulatory language like Tempe has, I have noticed have tended to eliminate any size restrictions for cultivation. Again, putting aside retail or processing specific sites, we're just talking about cultivation. So I'm happy to answer questions or go through any concerns or give more detailed language, and certainly after staff gives their presentation, trying not to be too redundant if staff is going to go through some of these items.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, I see your digital hand is up. Do you have a question for our applicant?
No, I don't. That was inadvertently left up. I apologize.
All right. Does anyone have questions for our applicant? If not, I will ask a question. All right, seeing none, I will hog the microphone. So thank you, Mr. McLaren, for your presentation. I guess not knowing that much about, how do I put this? When it comes to making an amendment to code, my thought would be, when in doubt, do nothing. And at present, I'm not sure why we need this amendment. So my question for you is, what harm is caused by having the 25,000 square foot maximum?
Yeah, great question, Chair Lyon. So to address that specifically, cultivation facilities of healthy businesses tend to be a bit larger than the 25,000 square foot facilities. And while we don't have any public information about the 4 specific facilities that are currently licensed and operating, I do have knowledge from being engaged through my clientele, both through our licensed brokerage team, which is based in Tempe, as well as our advisory services through our company, that these sites tend to be kind of between 50 and 75,000 square foot buildings. So the 25,000 square foot maximum, when we originally discussed this, and I was part of the application that approved the current version back in 2015, even though those buildings were larger than 25,000 square feet at the time, we kind of took the approach, well, let's kind of crawl before we walk, before we run. Let's start with a kind of median square footage limitation and see how that goes. It turns out that years later, a healthy size of an industrial cultivation site does need to be quite a bit larger than 25,000 square feet in order to meet demand of the market, and well as see efficiencies both through electrical, water usage, and also can contribute significantly to economic development with the construction of facilities through permit and use, and also through hiring of local employees for those sites. So I think the immediate response I would have that goes to your question, Chair Lyon, is simply that many of the sites in the state, and why you've seen some of the other municipalities remove their restrictions in any size that previously had some, as well as in Tempe, some of those sites would not attract as sophisticated an operator or be able to expand past their current hitting that limitation of 25,000 square feet.
All right, fair enough, well spoken. I'm told that we do now have your PDF, if you wish to refer to that.
Sure. I think the only slide that would be, oh, there we go. They'll put a face to a name there. The only slide that might be of particular interest, I can run through this quickly. Just an overview here. Next slide, please. Again, just appreciation for many years of collaboration with local staff and representatives, and also referring to local PD and fire. Very good to work with on advancing appropriate security measures for some of these facilities. Next slide, please. Just a little background again on us and our operations within Tempe. And I spoke to this earlier, but generally medical marijuana and the cannabis industry as a whole is quite complex. There's multiple levels of regulation, local municipalities, county, state, and the more we can move towards that kind of balancing of what works best for both the community and for business is always a win. Just a little history about us. We are a property owner in Tempe. We are currently, our corporate office is currently based up in Scottsdale, but we do have a Tempe-based commercial real estate brokerage team out of the real estate brokers on Mill. We do represent multiple medical marijuana businesses in Tempe. Next slide, please. So here's, I spoke to this earlier, won't belabor the point, but a good visual just to see kind of comprehensively in one place what some of the different zoning restrictions on sizes are in municipalities throughout Arizona. And happy to entertain any other questions.
All right, any other questions for Mr. McLaren? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. And Ms. Stovall, are you with us? I'm told we need just a moment. Ms. Stovall, can you unmute yourself?
Hello?
There you are.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. There we go. All right. Thank you. My name is Karen Stovall, Senior Planner, and this is a request for an amendment to the Zoning and Development Code to eliminate the maximum 25,000 square foot size restriction for medical marijuana cultivation facilities within the city of Tempe. The amendment would simply delete the sentence, which you can see is struck through on the slide, which limits the size, and no other modifications to the code are proposed. Next slide, please. A neighborhood meeting was not required for this application. Following completion of the staff report, we did receive one email in opposition to the request, and that email was mentioned during the study session. I will try to summarize it, but basically, the email listed issues pertaining to cultivation being an agricultural use, a less efficient use of water, concern for the health and welfare of the citizens of Tempe, and an increased security risk. Before completing our report, the police department and building safety division were contacted for input on this application. Police stated that they had no reason to oppose the request, and we did not receive a response from building safety. Staff is recommending approval of the requested code text amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Stovall? Commissioner Brown.
Good evening. The applicant used the term healthy in terms of a healthier business being larger. I think he meant economically healthy. The taxes that are paid by a larger cultivation facility would be equal, I believe, to the taxes paid by any user of a large industrial building of 26,000 square feet. Is that correct?
I'm going to defer that to the applicant.
I guess I'm speaking about real estate taxes. I see this as a financial advantage, but I'm not sure if there's any great advantage to the city. I just have a question or two when I come back on.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Brown. I believe your question, I didn't hear the first part, it dropped out a little bit. I believe your question was the difference between taxes paid by a licensed medical marijuana facility of this type versus any other industrial use. Is that correct?
That's it, yes.
Great. So as far as the real estate goes, the property taxes don't necessarily change. That would continue forward as in any other industrial use. But the medical marijuana facility itself at a larger operation would certainly produce more medical marijuana product that would be taxed at a different rate than other industrial sectors. And for the most part, while I don't want to make a comprehensive affirmative statement on this, it seems to be a higher tax for municipalities and the state than other industrial uses.
You mean tax at the point of sale, correct?
Both at the point of sale, depending on the site. So in many industrial sites and in Tempe specifically, the industrial sites don't typically have a point of sale at the cultivation. It needs to be a licensed dispensary. An exception to that would be if a location had a mixed use where there was both a retail dispensary point of sale as well an industrial cultivation attached to the same building.
I believe you've answered my question. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair DiDomenico.
Commissioner Brown, I'll weigh in. My experience, what I've seen in the marketplace, is that there is an immediate tax increase. First off, on the real estate tax side, which is a little bit more delayed, value of the buildings is what drives the amount of tax paid by a property, and the value of the building is driven by the rental stream on an income-producing property. My experience is that a cultivation facility, because there are so few areas where it can go, tends to pay a premium in rent to the tune of 150% of what you would get from a more traditional industrial user in the same building. So real estate taxes very quickly go up, but more directly, because they pay double to triple the rent that you would get from a typical user of that same building, the immediate impact on the sales tax charged on that monthly rent payment is seen quickly by the municipality, whether it's Tempe or Gilbert or Chandler or anybody else. And the other thing that we've seen in the marketplace is that rather than, if you have a 25,000 square foot limit, demand is what drives the amount of square footage that's going to be used for cultivation. So if you have a 25,000 foot limit and demand says you need 100,000 feet of cultivation in the valley somewhere, it just means you're going to have 4 facilities instead of 1. It doesn't mean that you're somehow limiting the amount of cultivation that happens. It's just like dairy farms. You know, if there's demand for milk, there's just going to be dairy farms somewhere. It's just how many of them do you have and how many neighborhoods does it encroach upon, and whether it's one giant dairy farm or 4 smaller ones. You know, that's really how I see it playing out here in Tempe.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Stovall? All right, so I'm going to come back with my original question. Ms. Stovall, can you tell us what harm is done by having a limit of 25,000 square foot that we are removing if we remove that condition?
Chairman Lyon, the only harm that would come to it would be, I believe, what the applicant has explained. I would say to look at it in the opposite direction from staff's point of view, from the input that we received by the police department and the lack of input or any concern received by building safety. There is no harm in lifting the 25,000 square foot restriction.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm going to save a comment question for a little later then. All right, so seeing no more questions for Ms. Stovall, well, thank you. And then let's see, do we have any public comment?
Chairman, we do not, other than the one we put on the record, and I also had emailed to the commission as a whole that came after the publication of the staff report. So it is on the record at this
Okay,
time.
fair enough. Thank you, Suparna. So let's come back to Mr. McLaren quickly. Do you have anything you wish to add?
Hi, yes, thank you, Chair Lyon. Just to clarify part of the earlier discussion and some of Vice Chair DiDomenico's comments, I think that was a great summary rather than my comments in response to Commissioner Brown's question. The one clarifying point I would make is while the demand certainly drives the increase in square footage required for cultivation, that then has implications on taxes. One of the keys to the lifting of the restriction of the size is that there are roughly only 130 licenses for medical marijuana operators in the state of Arizona, each of those licenses allows for only one cultivation site. So in a different licensing circumstance, you could certainly have 4 different sites of 25,000 square feet to get to 100,000 if that was the demand. However, in this scenario, an applicant who needs to meet the demand of 100,000 square feet would not be able to do that within the municipality of Tempe. Therefore, they would need to go to a neighboring municipality that could allow them such a site.
Okay, I appreciate that. Anything else that you wish to add at this time?
That's it. Thank you very much for the audience and for your consideration on the proposed amendment.
All right, thank you, Mr. McLaren. All right, commissioners, your thoughts. Commissioner Sumners.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, this is an interesting issue, as always, but especially as it relates to being competitive. If this business or someone similar wanted to develop and open a facility this big, they couldn't look at Tempe. If they wanted this size, they would be able to go to Phoenix, Scottsdale, Peoria, Flagstaff, and Tucson, but they couldn't look in Tempe. And I'd just like us to be competitive, so I'll be supporting this motion.
All right, let's go to Commissioner Amorosi next, please.
Thank you, Chairman Lyon. The way I see it is this is a highly regulated business industry. And for this business, if Tempe would lose out on this business because of this restriction, I'd rather see it in Tempe and Tempe getting some of the taxes at least, rather than losing the entire business, since they have a restriction on the amount of cultivation sites. Let's let Tempe take advantage of that. Thank you.
Vice Chair DiDomenico.
One of the things that's always bothered me the most about this is first of all, reminding ourselves that this is the cultivation facility is a legal use, in the right zoning areas. But it just always seems strange to me that we would put a size restriction on any particular business. We don't tell bars and restaurants how big they can be. We don't tell Lowe's you're too big. We like, Ace size places, or IKEA, you're too big a furniture store. So I like it when we let the demand and the marketplace determine, what the right size is, without setting arbitrary limits. So that's really where I'm coming from. Thank you.
All right, good comments. Any other comments, or I will jump in if not? Commissioner Brown.
Just thought I'd respond to Michael's comment of a moment ago. I do some work over on the west side of town, and there are some cities that I don't have to name that built these huge distribution centers, which are, in some cases, they're 3/8 of a mile long, over 1 million square feet. And they're big and competitive, but they are absolutely not contributing to the character or the really the employment of the town. They're specialized uses. We regulate a lot of things, pawn shops and massage studios or massage therapists, gun shops and so forth. And this is a different use, and I think that there is a qualitative component which people do oppose to some extent. And so I think this is really just an economic question, and it's for the advantage of the business, but not necessarily for the character or the employment of Tempe. Just want to voice that there are different ways of looking at this issue, in addition to the strictly the real estate efficiency market.
All right. Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? All right, I'll jump in. I like what I've heard from several of you, and I think it's all well put. And I will confess some amount of ignorance in some of these subjects. I'm out of my depth. But I just think on that basis, I can't support this appeal. This restriction does control the amount of cultivation which we have in our city. I believe that was put in place for a reason, and I don't know if that reason is a good reason or a bad reason, but I haven't really heard enough that convinces me that it is definitely wrong, that there is definitely a good to be had by reversing it. Marijuana, while legal, is a controlled substance, and you know, it's a hot topic for a reason. So I guess I just feel that for me to support this, I would have to know an awful lot more and be a lot more sure that this really is the right thing to do, other than the fact that, well, we've seen this is what other cities are doing. So I will not be supporting the application. Other comments I see, how about Commissioner Johnson?
I'd just like to offer a motion if we're ready for that.
All right, let's go to Commissioner Casano first. Do you have a comment?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I look at Tempe as being landlocked, and yes, we have industrial properties, and they're pretty much fixed in place now. I don't see that this enhances the city of Tempe in enough of an economic way that it would be a harm to us if we did not grant this request for a change in the code. Therefore, I will not be supporting this change.
All right, so how about we get to that motion, Commissioner Johnson?
Sure, I move for the approval of PL 200016, medical marijuana amendment.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second, Commissioner Summers.
All right, Commissioner Sumners, you've been quiet most of the night, but here you're jumping in. All right, so motion to approve from Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Sumners. Commissioner Brown, how do you vote?
No.
Commissioner Casano?
No.
Vice Chair DiDomenico?
Yes, aye.
I vote nay. Commissioner Sumners?
Aye.
Commissioner Amorosi?
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
All right, so the motion passes 4-3 with Commissioners Brown, Casano, and Chairman Lyon in dissent. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the last of our regular pieces of business. We thank you all for contributing and sticking with us. Do we have any updates from staff? Ms. Dasgupta?
Chairman and commission members, just to remind that the next meeting of DRC is May 26th. And we will find out how we are operating by that time and whether this is still going to be a WebEx meeting. At this time, I really appreciate, I want to just say to our IT staff and our commission members who had made the time to come to our practice run and worked with us with so many different practices and all the work that went in from Joanna and our IT to make this work today with the planners all working, getting all their, and the applicants, really appreciate the applicants' participation through online and having this, fairly seamless compared to how stressful it seemed like for the first meeting. So I'm really was nervous, and I'm really happy to say this was a good meeting. So with that, that's all I have.
Hear, hear. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.